Christ Church is a unique place. I've been here now for 19 years. And literally for 19 years, almost every 6 months, the group of volunteers changes over. If you don't believe me, think back to when we went on Zoom with COVID, and we had never done Zoom before, so that was a new group. Who were your group facilitators? And 6 months later, who were they? And now, who are they? And so in every level, because people are moving in, people are moving out, Spanish, English, Portuguese, French. Which language do we do? Do we add services? I came from a background of adding services and adding people pretty much every week to fast-growing churches. I don't measure what we do anymore in my life by how many people are here. That's not a metric for me. This is a little church with a big message. And the real message is the few people who come, or the many who come, is your life really being changed? Are you really experiencing the love and the presence and the interest, the motivation to grow? So we just had a series, Nate taught most of it, called Little Letters, Big Message. And I could have called this one Little Church, Big Message. But instead we called it, Hey, Christ Church, can we see some ID? And like, who are we? Who are you? And then who are we together? And just remember, even as you're sitting here, I don't know how many people are online, Dave could tell me, maybe 25 or 30 people, I think.
20.
20?
Yeah.
Okay, 20 people online. Good to see you. And last week, I was really focused on teaching you the letter of 2 John. Today, I have some more illustrations. And we need to integrate our training and our abilities with our spirituality, and we need to integrate all of that together. So I hope this message is encouraging and inspiring, and this is the first of 2 parts. This is only half, the other half comes next week. So now I'm on the text, Andres. Are we having a good speed, my friend? Good, okay, great. Our son, Lisa, and my son, Josh, works for a company that has been in existence for more than 150 years. I didn't know there were companies that have been going that long. Actually, I did, but 150 years. Since the American Civil War, these guys have been in business. But in the March of 2020, they faced a huge challenge. Hundreds of university students were scheduled to spend 10 to 14 weeks across America in direct sales. Direct sales means you go talk to somebody and say, will you buy this product? And you present it. All of the training was focused on literally lifetimes of developing and refining a system to help young people overcome their fears, overcome obstacles, achieve personal growth and financial earnings in what is normally one of the toughest summers of their life. Southwestern Advantage, that's what it's called. I didn't write that for you, Andres. Southwestern Advantage had recently been recognized as the #1 training program in the United States for college interns, beating out companies like Google and NASA. So these guys had a really good training program for the direct sales. But in March of 2020, you remember, you may not remember about college internships, but if you had college kids, you do. College internships were shutting down all across America. Travel was being curtailed globally. COVID was seemingly everywhere. People were afraid, and sending college kids door to door for direct sales seemed impossibly absurd. So Josh was actually visiting us in Uruguay in those first weeks of March. And we were all wondering what would happen. He was not only hoping to sell, he had also recruited a team that would be working with him, and he felt responsible for them. I was pretty sure the summer would be suspended. How can they possibly go forward, I said. And Josh was, like a good young man, felt like it would go forward. Josh was right, and they called him into work. But they changed the approach, the training, the travel, the lodging arrangements. They took their direct sales, door-to-door team online, working out of rented hotel rooms. And by August, they had grown their business by more than 30%. It was such an incredible business story that they wrote a book to tell what they did. So I have the book here, Redefining Possible. It tells their story of breaking through, literally, belief barriers and creating a new normal. So I recommend the book. I watched it happen through the eyes and ears and experience of my son. So in chapter 2 of this book, the authors teach a simple acronym for overcoming obstacles, and I want to share it with you today in the hopes that you can apply this simple idea to any area, every area of your life where you want to grow. And so when we're talking about the ID of Christ Church, what is our identity and your identity? One of the identities that we need is to be a place that's learning how to resolve conflicts and overcome obstacles. And so this is raft. So you know raft is something that can help you float on the water. And recognize that an event is happening. Accept that the event is happening. That seems the same, but it's not. Recognizing that it's happening and accepting that it's happening, two different things. Focus on what you can control and then transform those negative aspects into positive opportunities. What can I learn? What can I do? And so COVID has created many obstacles in our lives. All of us have had to determine different choices and responses. And so RAFT just gives us a simply great way to think about a response. Now, most people who are faced with a crisis or a sudden obstacle will react in one of three ways. Psychologists tell you this. Many of you are already familiar with this. It's not new information. But in English, we call it freeze, flee, or fight. Maybe you flip those around and say it in a different order. And so you've probably heard that, but it's great to remember and to recognize how we can apply that to our own tendencies in different areas of our life. Sometimes we know something and we apply that in work, but we forget to apply it in an argument with our family member or our neighbor. Well, freeze, these are three ways that we typically might react in a sudden crisis. Freeze means that you hear some bad news or something happens and you feel stuck. That's kind of mine, actually. That's one of my main ones. There's a crisis right there, and for just a moment, I'm just like, froze. I'm a soccer player. I was a long time ago. And I thought, if that dog ever kicks me, I will kick the dog first. So one day the dog came to bite me, and the dog bit me and was gone, and I was bleeding before I even had my chance to kick it. And one, the dogs are really quick. And two, I just kind of froze in the moment of crisis. So freeze means you get some bad news, you feel stuck, you don't know what to do, so you carry the bad news with you, and possibly you try to share it with other people so that they will share your anxiety. Flee means we pretend the bad news is not really that bad. That's another one of mine. I just say, well, it's raining, but, sun will come out tomorrow. We think positive thoughts. We push away the bad thoughts. We deny it. We ignore it. Or maybe we just go somewhere else. Something bad is happening here, so we walk away. and think that if we change our context, that bad news will not really be happening. And fight means to react with a purpose, to respond maybe rather than just react. Not all fighting is good. We think fight like a bad fight, but a positive fight, like having the right tools and attitude, then fighting can be very powerful. Fighting is very powerful when we follow the raft. We recognize, we accept, we focus on what we can control. Now, to focus on what I can control means I begin to take responsibility for what is mine. Wow, it's raining. I hate rainy days. And so I have to turn that around and say, well, what can I do if it's raining? I can put on a raincoat. What else, what other things, or I could get wet. But take what is my responsibility. Seems like a simple thing, but it's not that easy. Practice it and see how you're doing. So focus means taking responsibility for our part. And what I wanted to highlight here is to remember we cannot change another person, but we can change ourselves. And if I can change, the people, the system around me will shift as well. The ability to focus gives us the opportunity to transform an obstacle into an opportunity. And so this is just like a simple life skill. And I don't want to give you just a simple answer like if you pray, or if you come to church, or if I pray for you, it will all be good. Prayer is an important part, and we'll come to that. But also helping people understand who they are and how to apply skills so that the community can grow and we can experience real change on the inside. Now, most of us, perhaps all of us, have obstacles in our lives that we don't talk about with others. We have problems in our work, in our family, our finances, our health. We have some doubts. We have some fears. We have some anxieties. And so this simple acronym of RAFT that was up there might help us. Now, some people find really good balance and rhythm in their life. And it's like, wow. But most people struggle. I'm not talking about what other people think of you. You say, well, everybody sees that I'm pretty balanced and doing well. I'm talking about how do you see yourself? How do you experience yourself? Because most of us are pretty good at disguising the hard parts. We show the good parts. And so when we're used to disguising the hard parts, it can be hard to actually recognize and accept that those are part of me, my limitations, my struggles. So recognizing a problem or an obstacle is important, but accepting requires self-awareness. How can I accept, for example, that I am not a good listener? I think I'm a good listener. I say I'm a good listener, but actually my impact in other people could be that they say, John just doesn't listen to me. There's no point telling him. He's just going to do what he's going to do. So, well, that's not true. Just tell me what you want me to know and I'll listen. So it can be hard for me to recognize maybe I'm actually not a good listener. If people don't feel listened to by me, then that's my reality. I need to recognize it, I need to accept it, and I need to take responsibility. So, I might say, what is my obstacle? Who am I? Why is this hard for me? Why is this an obstacle? Who could help me? Asking somebody for help is an important part of growth. What kind of person do I want to be? That helps me not only think about my present problem, but to get through the problem and think on the other side. Think have a bigger perspective. Life is much bigger. So what kind of person do I want to be? What kind of result or outcome would be most desirable? For example, I would like to lose some weight. But when they say, would you like dessert? I'm like, yeah, this time, which is every time. And because I'm enjoying the process of my life right now, having some more dessert and the losing weight or whatever, that can start, tomorrow or the next week. Actually I'm doing pretty good. And so I pretend it's not happening. But if I can focus on the result, how would I feel? How would my clothes fit? What would my energy be or my asthma be or whatever it is that I'm hoping to achieve? If I can keep that goal, then my perspective is greater and my motivation and energy to achieve that is greater. Does that make sense? That makes sense when we're losing weight, everyone says, or trying to get healthy or do something. What if you applied that same principle and teaching to a spiritual problem that you have, or a fear, or an addiction? So, self-awareness requires self-observation, which means some silence, some solitude. It means making some sense out of our past to make sense of our present. It requires listening to what other people say about us, asking curious questions. Now, how much of that is really true about me? Why does hearing that, something someone says, make me happy? The affirmation, or sad, or angry, or frustrated. Self-awareness means being able to feel and identify and even talk about my emotions. Self-awareness allows us to recognize and accept our limitations. We all have them. I grew up maybe thinking I didn't have limitations. I could be anything I wanted to be. And I also grew up not being able to name any emotion that I was having unless I was angry. I knew if I was angry. The rest of it was just kind of didn't exist for me. So I was unaware that all these emotions had a part in my life. So if I'm unaware, I can't manage that. I can't learn from it. I can't grow from it. And I struggled for a long time. I also didn't recognize some of my own limitations that other people could clearly see, but I couldn't. And if I can't know my own limitation, then I'm set up for lots of frustration. Now, I had hoped to give everybody a piece of paper on the chair where you're sitting and to tell you out there in Zoom land to find a piece of paper. But I don't have a piece of paper for you today. So I'm going to do an imaginary exercise. Just think. If you have a piece of paper, you can write something down. I'll ask you a couple questions and you just think about it. You don't have to tell me or anybody else your answer, so don't worry. It's not a test. It's just something for you. This is about practicing self-awareness. And so reflect about yourself. Don't reflect about anybody else. I'm going to ask you, first of all, just kind of sit comfortably. Just kind of sit. If you're already comfortable, that's great. Take some deep breaths. It's good. Get the oxygen back to your brain. Be still. And then on the PowerPoint will be 3 questions. Just ask yourself, how does my body feel? How does my mind feel? Like, where are my thoughts going? There may be anything else that comes to mind. And then in 2 minutes, we'll do 2 minutes, just silence. And then I'll say, think of an emotion that best describes you in this moment. You won't have to share any of this with anybody, so just for self-reflection, okay? 2 minutes. And if you're out there in Zoom, you just join in with your own 2 minutes. I'll tell you when it's up.
Now think of several feelings you might have right now, whatever they are, and try to think of one that best describes you right now. Okay. Now, I hope that's interesting. That's something you could do every day, and you would be surprised at things you might learn. And your awareness now, depending on perhaps the emotions that you felt, may give you an insight into how you're actually experiencing this room or this talk or this whatever. It might give you some experience into how you're experiencing that. But listen, I know you didn't need to come to church to do any of this. You could have watched, a better speaker on a TED Talk, or you could have read this book for yourself. Some of you already know all of this. Maybe you even teach it. And so one of the questions about church, any church, Christ Church, is why do we even come? COVID brought changes. Half of us, or less than half, but a good group of us are still online. We used to use Zoom to have conversations and dialogue. Remember that? We'd get into our groups and talk about what we'd heard, but now we don't. So why do we come? Some people say, couldn't we just watch a good speaker online and some videos and listen to some good music? So why come to Christ Church? That's a great question. It's a scary question for me because I want you to come. But these are the questions I want to talk about today and next Sunday. And I want to share more and why I'm here and what I believe to be true about our community and our potential if we're listening and working and walking together. I am actually really excited about what I'm experiencing in this Christ Church community. And I want to kind of break it down for us with a goal of encouraging and equipping you as an individual, and then all of us together as a community to redefine possible in our own lives. And recognize, I would love for myself and all of us to be developing the skill to recognize what's going on around us, what's going on inside us, to be able to accept the reality of who we are, our limitations and our losses, even when they're hard. To focus on how to be able to take responsibility for my own life. And then together, by the mercy and grace of God, experience transformation of the basically continual life crisis and turn them into opportunities for personal and spiritual growth. And so the text from the New Testament that I want us to be looking at and reflecting on the next couple of weeks is from Paul's letter to the Romans, and it is in chapter 12. And I'm hoping that as you engage in this, as we talk about it, that you'll get a whole new level of understanding about our mission and vision and culture and hopes and dreams for Christ Church and who you are and who you hope to become, and how participating in this community, even if it's just 3 weeks or 3 years or 19 years or more, how that can help us individually and help other people experience God's grace and presence and power working in our life. So Romans 12, 1-8, I'm going to look at today. And you can be looking at it this week and reading. The things that Paul says here appear to be simple, but they're not simple. They're actually hard. And that's why it comes in Romans 12. He's already written most of his letter before that to try to provide some context and some training and some teaching to be able to get to the part about love your enemies and things like that in chapter 12. But I'm going to jump in chapter 12. So, verses 1-8 say, "Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. For by the grace given to me, says Paul, I say to every one of you, don't think of yourself more highly than you ought, but rather think of yourself with sober judgment, in accordance with the faith God has distributed to each of you. For just as each of us has one body with many members, these members do not all have the same function. So in Christ, we, though many, form one body, and each member belongs to all the others. We have different gifts according to the grace given to each of us. If your gift is prophesying, then prophesy in accordance with your faith. If it is serving, serve. If it is teaching, teach. If it is to encourage, then give encouragement. If it is giving, then give generously. If it is to lead, do it diligently or well. If it is to show mercy, do it cheerfully. So let me highlight a couple of the remarks that Paul has made here. First of all, in verse 1, he says, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Well, for right now, I think the simplest thing I can say is that we can understand that Paul is talking to everybody who's a disciple or a follower of Christ. All Christians everywhere who are going to read his letter. And he's saying that these people, us, we need to be whole, integrated people. And that's why I was talking about self-awareness. Our bodies that some of us ignore. Some people are like, yeah, I do this. I'm listening to my body. I'm together here. But some of us ignore. And our body sends us messages like, slow down, relax, go to sleep, get moving, go see a doctor, exercise, take a break, eat more of this, eat less of that. Also, our emotions must be integrated. If we ignore, like I did, or deny the impact of our emotions, then our heart, our spirit, our mind, we become bifurcated or divided inside. Many of our modern illnesses, we know, are manifestations of unresolved stress and anxiety, anger, bad habits that we've buried deeply inside us without self-awareness. That means that we can have things that are affecting us, is what I'm trying to say, and by not having the awareness, we're just unaware of why these troubles are coming. And some of us are even aware, but we still ignore our body's message, myself included. I like to think, hey, I made it this far and I'm doing okay, so, I can still have another dessert. And Paul is reminding us really on a larger scale that when we hide things away and we pretend like it's not really a big deal, it's not important, those little things build up, as we know. Little things build up to, if they're good things, they build up to great. And if they're bad things, they build up to a problem, a crisis, an obstacle between us and God. And so that's where we need RAFT. Recognize, accept, focus, transform. And so verse 2 says, don't conform to the pattern of the world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. So I'm bringing Paul into our context, and I'm saying he's saying that the general pattern of the world, the way our culture works, is like tossing seas. James wrote that in one of his letters. It's like tossing seas and waves. And so you need a raft, something that can help you get through. That's a conscious recognition, acceptance, focus, taking responsibility in transformation. And Paul says that transformation comes by the renewing of our mind. This renewal, and here on the screen, is the work of faith. Faith is intellectual assent that Jesus is who he claimed to be and that he told the truth. Hebrews 11:1 says, the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Now, that can sound confusing. You have to think about it, and I won't go there today. Except to say that faith is not an emotional effort. It's not just a positive vibe. Faith is choosing to believe that God is real and that He is present. I may not always feel like it, but I choose to believe that by faith. That is believing that His presence, His peace, His power are available to actually transform my mind, my heart, my life, so that I can live with love and truth, mercy and peace, receiving love and giving love in return. Some of that's what we talked about last week in 2 John. So don't conform anymore to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that's faith, and then you'll be able to test and approve what God's will is, His good, pleasing, and perfect will. So the last part of verse 2 is saying that once we choose to believe, faith, and allow the work of faith to settle into our mind, and we're choosing to trust God with the process and with our life and with our circumstances, even when it doesn't feel good, then then we begin to recognize and accept the circumstances. That faith allows me to accept my circumstances because I'm starting to trust that God will show a way through, even when I can't see it. See how that acceptance then comes together? I'm saying, I don't understand why this happened. It's a mystery. We will not understand why many things happen in this life. But we begin to accept when we say, God is real and He has promised to give us a way through. And so He will give us an opportunity to grow, even when we don't understand the mysteries or the frustrations that surround us. And God really does have the best in mind for you. And so a couple of points that I want to make from verses 3 to 8 that hopefully encourages you then to read it at home before I finish for today. So verses 3 to 8 say, it's there on the screen, by the grace given to me, I say to every one of you, don't think of yourself more highly than you ought, but think of yourself with sober judgment in accordance with the faith God has given to each of you. Excuse me. For just as each of us has one body, that's me with one body, many members like a hand and a foot and an ear, all of these different members, my hand, my foot, my ear, have different functions. And in the same way, in Christ, Christians form a body, and each member is part of all the others. So we have different gifts, and he names the different gifts and says, find out what your gift is. Find out what your role is. What is your part in the larger body, the larger community? And since we're all going to be different, we don't have to compare ourselves. What a relief that is. Paul is saying we should recognize and accept our limitations with sober judgment. Means be realistic about who you are, what you can accomplish, and just be the best version of you. You don't have to do more or be more to make God happy or anyone else. Just be you. Recognize who you are. And in the context of Christian community and spirituality, I would say practice some silence and solitude. Listen. That little exercise we did today. Serve. Discover your talents and gifts. As you're serving, listen to how other people tell you. And you realize, this really isn't for me. Or, wow, I really enjoy or love doing this. Develop skills, but be yourself. You are a unique gift to the people and the place where you are. You really are. And you may not believe that. And so why don't you practice saying that to yourself every morning when you get up and just say, you know what? I am a unique gift to these people and to this place. So no, I'm not really. Yes, you really are. You're unique. Nobody else is seeing the things that you see and thinking the things that you think. So don't think, well, that's obvious. Everybody knows. Say, no, I'm seeing this. And share who you are. That's your gift with the world. That's part of your gift. So you can make the world a better place. by sharing the thoughts that you have, the ideas, the skills. And do you see now how being a part of a community is such an important part of our personal growth? So much of what I'm talking about, without having to explain it, doesn't happen if you're by yourself. And you can't be that gift to other people if you're by yourself. So that's part of why we become a community. We become a church. A healthy community, hopefully, that's learning to live with faith, hope, and love. And so we can walk together. Now, Paul is recognizing that everybody's different, but each person has a role. My role is different from your role. But that doesn't make me a better person or a more important person. My role in this moment may be more important, yes. But I'm not a more important person. Does that make sense? So we can flatten this out a little bit and not have who's in charge and who has to take orders. We can stop as a community and say, let's learn to enjoy that we have different roles and not worry about who's important or who's better or who's worse. Let's worry about how do we help each person discover their role and be successful in that. So we need people who think, people who count, sing, laugh, talk, listen, paint, fix things, love children, love older people, love middle-aged people, singles, married, cooking, driving, paying, encouraging, praying, protecting, watching over. Everybody has a role, and everybody has their own little road to walk. So here at Christ Church, our roads have joined for a time. And we're here to make each other better as we redefine possible. Wherever you are in your life, there's still a lot of life out ahead of you. There really is. There's a lot of potential. And this is just a small moment. And so step back and say, wow, part of this group, I can learn to make the next step and redefine possible. So next week, I'm going to talk specifically about our Christ Church mission, vision, and values. But I wanted to say these things first because we're a community. If one person is suffering and is sad or is depressed or is gone, it impacts all of us. If somebody's really doing well, then that's great. If somebody's traveling, we miss their participation and presence. When somebody serves or contributes, we all benefit. And so we're being transformed as individuals and as a community. My greatest hope and desire as your pastor at Christ Church is that you would be encouraged and equipped, like practical skills, to follow Christ, to take the next step wherever your step needs to go, and to experience the power and presence of God in your life. And then that you would become an integral part, and many, many, many of us are, an integral part in helping others around us to do the same. And these aren't secrets about Christ Church. Some of you say, well, I'm just a visitor here. These are should be the normal expectations and hopes and dreams for every Christian community, church, everywhere. And so whenever you leave this place, it's carrying that same heart and attitude and learning with you, and to keep going. So consider this week, why are you here? Who are you? I don't believe you're here by accident. And so ask yourself, do I want to know more, be more, participate more, here and in all the places where you live and play, work and serve? You can. It's possible. So my last thing today, the takeaway for today, remember the raft. To actively develop some self-awareness, take the exercise we did this today and maybe write it down each day. Remember, how do I feel? How's my body? How's my mind? What emotion or feeling most describes me right now? I think God will speak to you. He'll speak to us as we work on that together.